Leave meeting, cancel.
No. Awesome. All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Kwame Akowa. I'm an accountant and also a financial strategist. My company is Global Dime Consulting, and we mostly work with individual small businesses. And today, in our presentation, we'll be doing more of wealth building and planning for retirement. And with me here is Ezin, and I'll allow him to introduce himself
Yep.
to you all.
Hello, everyone. My name is Wallerand Ezin, and I'm financial representative at Michigan Financial Companies here in Southfield, Michigan. And indeed, what I do is mainly working on different strategies that you can use to prepare in terms of what we call like wealth accumulation and also protection in terms of your future and particularly in this case your retirement. So the discussion today is going to run around those type of topics.
Awesome. So just to start off, we want to cover basically the agenda for the day. And our agenda is simply we are going to talk about money and how you can save some for retirement, which means in the days when you are not working, when you are not active, that you can ensure you have a consistent income and you don't run out of money. So our agenda, we will first talk about the paradox of financial success and then kind of discuss why people fail to become financially successful. And so we also dive into understanding where you stand financially, talk about your net worth statement, how you can, calculate your net worth. We'll discuss cash flow statement and then preparing for your future, where we get into wealth accumulation, protection, and a lot more detail about retirement and all the different areas. So how we are going to do it is I'll let Ezin drive the bus, and then we'll kind of jump in with questions or any comments that we'll have, and I'll also jump in once in a while. All right, Ezin, the floor is yours.
Okay, all right, Jonathan, if you can go to the next slide. That was the agenda, right? So that's what Kwame was just referring to, those 4 different points. So typically, these are some of the questions that people have, the paradox of financial success. So if you take a look at a traditional approach, here are some of the most common questions. Do I have enough life insurance? How much interest does my IRA or this particular IRA pays? How much do I really need to save? Am I putting enough money away for retirement? Is Social Security going to be available? What is actually a Roth IRA? Is my disability policy enough? The one I have. Do I have a should I have a 401k or Roth IRA? Do I actually need a cancer policy? What's the best college savings program? What is long-term care? Do I need it? How can I afford all of this? So those are some of the typical questions that all of us typically have when we are either going to meet a financial advisor or the reason that drives us to look for a financial advisor. So go ahead to the next slide, Jonathan. Now, how do we behave now? Once we have those questions on the mind, most people, would look at cost, affordability, and then look at different rule of thumbs, and to make that particular decision. So some of the initial step that would be, go ahead, Jonathan. You would look at your premiums. How much does this life insurance cost? For instance, you understand that you have so much student loan debt, and then it would make sense for you to have a life insurance in place so that the loan doesn't fall back on your parent, God forbid, but should something happen before you even finish your studies or really paid off that loan, and you know that your parent may have co-signed on the loan. Now, after a while, you got started in your first job or so, and you start contributing to your 401k. And obviously, the first step that you take here is you make sure that the deductions are very low, that they're not taking too much out of your paycheck. Because you have all these new bills coming, maybe like a car note or like maybe even a first mortgage if you just got that job and you're going fairly well. So all those things. Go ahead, Jonathan. Then you decide, because you have that new job, you decide to buy some disability insurance, because that's kind of protection on your actual new income. And then you hear maybe on a TV show or so, then it makes sense to have a Roth IRA. So now you're already funding your 401k. So you say, okay, let me just start that Roth IRA because I heard that it's something that's tax free at retirement. And then, the first baby is on the way, and then say, okay, should I start saving for college? And then what type of college fund do I have to have in place? So those are very, very practical and real life type of situation that I run into personally all the time. And I see the way that people proceed to make those decisions is really based on that type of thought process. So now we go a few years down the road. You have a number of plans in place. Go ahead, Jonathan. And then you start doing periodic reviews. So maybe after 5 years, and even if you don't have all that family situation, and so you may just be a student and then have put a couple things in place, and then 2 years down the road before you graduate, you're just taking a look at your plans, and this is what you notice. Go ahead, Jonathan. So you have a little bit in retirement savings, you have a life insurance, and maybe you have disability. But the thing is that they're not coordinated. You bought all those plans at different points in time, and then in a very ad hoc manner, basically. Go ahead, Jonathan. So that's lack of coordination is what the problem is on the table at this point. So people, that's when you start asking yourself, the purpose behind each strategy. Go ahead, Jonathan. So you should start wondering, okay, um, why did I buy this much life insurance, or what did I want to do with this 401k where I'm putting just $75 a pay? How much is that really going to grow over the years? Those questions start coming maybe 2 years after you've started that plan, or after you've been funding it, or even that Roth IRA. It's not too clear to you anymore how much, why are you putting money in it. So those are strategy questions. And typically they come when you start reviewing your plans after you put them in place. When you start reviewing the statements, when you start feeling a crunch on your budget and you see all those money going into all directions, and so. And those are really strategic questions that let's look at the best way to proceed. So go ahead, Jonathan. So we noticed that what you took was really an upside down approach. On the step one, you were focusing on products. So you were trying to buy life insurance, 401k, Roth IRA. So at the end, on step two, you look at your picture and then you have a portfolio of different products. And that's all it is, like an ad hoc portfolio of products, things that you bought at different points in time for different reasons. And that's when step three, you start really asking yourself those questions. Those are very, very strategic questions. So what we observe is that most of the time people will take this type of upside down approach. Go ahead, Jonathan, to the next one. So you can see that we need to reverse that process. First, you want to define your strategy. For instance, ask yourself, what do I want life insurance to do for me and my loved one? So is it a plan that I'm getting just for my student loan, or is it a plan that I'm really getting just to replace the potential income I would have had over a number of years? And if so, how much would make sense? So second question, when do I want to retire? That's how you begin the process of choosing your plan, or of planning actually. How much money will I need in the future during retirement? How long will my saving last during retirement? You see, or if I were disabled, how much would I need to maintain my standards, basically my bills? I would have calculated how much do I really need, and if I'm disabled and not getting that regular income, what is the exact number that I need to be able to replace? And I mean for an extended amount of time. What are the future costs now? A case where you have the children and you're starting to think about their college education. You want to really pick specific schools or have an average of the national cost of college and in different areas of the country, and then really go on that basis to calculate how much you need to be saving for that college education. When should I begin taking Social Security? Because Social Security is something you can start, at different ages. Currently, somewhere around 62, 66 and a half, or 70 for the most part. based on the year of birth. And what impact would long-term care needs have on all my assets accumulation? So God forbid, but in my 80s or 90s, if things are not working so well and I need to get assistance, to eat or even to stand up or sit down on the chair, if I need assistance for various activities of daily living, um, am I going to have to sell my house to get the assistants to come to my home or to be in a nursing home? What is it that what is the what is going to be the impact of that long-term care need on my assets basically? And obviously, can a written financial profile help me monitor and track progress on all these different aspects? So basically, does writing all these things down in a very concise and very clear way, in a structured way, can it help me really organize and make informed decision and organize my numbers and my goals basically? So that's really where the paradox of financial success stands. Go ahead. So the second step, after you've entered or you've defined answers to these, is really to design a portfolio. So based on your priorities, the priorities that you've identified, whether it be the retirement, insurance, or college, whichever your priorities are, and you can see that in here the wheels they are different in size. So that really shows what your priority is, at the time that you're building your plan, basically. Okay, go to the next one. And now you want to skip to the next one because all these numbers I'm gonna show them on the next slide. I'm gonna explain them. So and then after you've done all these steps, and then you can hold off here, Jonathan. After you've done all these first two steps, you can start choosing financial products. And let me show you what is the process of choosing financial products. So I'm gonna take the example of someone who's trying to prepare retirement over a span of about 20 years. And that person is going to use two different processes, one with ABC annuities, and the second one with XYZ funds. So those are fictitious companies or different types of plans. So go ahead, Jonathan. So the goal right here, and remember in the strategy, you always have to identify your goals very clearly and quantify them actually as much as you can. The goal is to have $4,000 income at age 65. And you've already went to the site and you know that based on your income currently, like for instance, the new job that you have or the part-time jobs that you're doing while you're studying, your social security potentially would be somewhere around 2,200. Obviously, that's hypothetical. So at this point, you can see that from 2,200, all you need is $1,800 to make that 4,000 amount. So what you're doing here, you're starting, and then you can hold off, Jonathan. You can, yeah, right there. Right. Okay. So you started that job. You have your 401k plan, and you know that your employer is matching 4%. So based on that, you ran your numbers. You say that if you contribute 7% of your salary, you might be able to accumulate somewhere around 400,000 by the time you reach that age 65. So that's one thing you do. So you know that 7% is the number that will work here because your employer matches, and then your own effort that puts a total of 11% of your salary going into that plan, that 401k, for the next so many years until you reach age 65. Right here, it's a person who's about 45 years old. They have 20 years to build that. So the next one, Jonathan. So now they look outside of their employer plan, and they see that, well, I can also say it makes sense for me to set up a Roth IRA because it's going to be tax-free at retirement, and I can contribute based on my budget and everything up to 3,500 a year, with a goal of building about 236,000 in this plan. So we got 400,000 coming from my 401k, and then 236,000 coming from my Roth IRA. So that's where the person stands right now. And these together would be somewhere around 540,000. To be more exact, it's about 536, but I just wanted up to 540,000. Accumulation over a 20-year time frame, assuming that you've grown your investment at about 8% over that 20 years. You see, so that's the 540,000. And from that 540,000, you can actually set up a lifetime guaranteed income with ABC annuities. Okay, so now you take the money out of of all these plans, and then you somehow merge them into an annuity plan that pays 1,800. Based on the 540,000, it will be paying 1,800 every month for the rest of your life. Some annuities do have some features called riders that would allow them to do that. So the 540,000 would be set up in that annuity. It would continue to grow, but at the same time it's growing, it's generating a monthly income of 18,000. So that's how you solve that problem. And Jonathan, you can hit OK for the next. That's just a disclaimer that says this is an illustration, and we're not really giving you specific investments here. So that's what the planning is about. Now, how do you get to that point? With a disciplined approach. So first off, you started off with a strategy. So you have a very comprehensive, and you can see that it's the base of the pyramid. So basically, that's really where you spend most of the time. Uh, and then the second step, once the strategy, you have all the questions, you know all your numbers, then you can start building a portfolio. In the slide before, the portfolio here would be Roth IRA combined with the 401k, the exact amounts and numbers that you need to use. And that's where step 3 comes, where you choose the actual companies that would allow you to achieve those goals. And that's where the product step comes at the end. So that's the best discipline approach in terms of best practice, really, to achieve this type of goals. Now, why do people fail usually to do this? So, and it's very straightforward. The first reason is people don't have a strategy. So they get to retirement oftentimes without having put enough thought into how much they really needed to be putting in their 401ks, or what is the best way to structure their investments. Procrastination. Sometimes you do have a very solid plan in hand, but you just put it on the shelf and say, okay, you know what? Let me take care of these bills first, and blah blah blah. And so time goes by, and you never got started on any aspects of your plan. Go ahead. And then obviously the impact of inflation, and that's more common than you think, because when you're too conservative in investment, when you're too scared of the stock market, for instance, it can lead to becoming subject to inflation. You see, because then you put all your investment in very conservative investment too early, like you start using bonds when you're in your 20s, which typically would not be the most suitable way to achieve those goals. And obviously paying too much in taxes when you don't use the right strategy, um, you miss out on tax efficient planning, basically. And then obviously making poor investment choices. So those few things put together are some of the main reason why people can miss out on proper planning and proper readiness at retirement time. So now let me go here, and I wanted to inject real quick here that if Kwame, you think that I should, you have questions, or you wanna.
No, I think you've covered a few things. One of the things I wanted to add is the strategy part, which is where my always the interest is. And I think people undermine the importance of having a strategy before you even build a portfolio and go after the product that you're going to use to kind of fill in the portfolio. The reason why you need that is, I illustrate it this way. You think about it, if you are going to a place and you don't have a destination in mind, any any road will take you anywhere. But normally, nobody will just get on the road without knowing where they are going. It barely happens. So, like a GPS, when you put in your destination, it draws a map that will get you to that destination. That's basically what the strategy is to give you a clear roadmap of where you want to be when you retire. And that is when you'll be able to build a portfolio that will direct you or that will help you get to that destination, and then have the products to fund or to facilitate that portfolio. So basically, I just wanted to talk about that strategy part. I think is really key for everybody that wants to plan their financial future to start from having a strategy in place. But I'll let you go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, definitely. And I couldn't emphasize that better than you just did. And the goal over your career is to increase your net worth, because that's really how you get to a point and to a position where you can actually afford this constant, 4,000 a month expenses during retirement when you're not working anymore. You need to have a net worth that's high enough, whereby you can actually use those assets, and then cover your expenses. So the goal is to increase that net worth over the year, as you acquire assets, in the form of investments over the year, like you build more into your 401k, you build more into your IRAs, and even individual stocks that you may purchase, on top of it, because both 401ks and Roth IRAs have limits, that you cannot exceed, when you fund them over the year. But now, what is the net worth? So go ahead, Jonathan. So first, your assets. We're looking at your assets. So imagine you have the house, you have cars, and all those different things. But now those hopefully appreciate. I mean, the car would depreciate in value, but the house, would appreciate. Whereby, if at retirement you decide to move or to downsize or so, you have like some money there or some equity there that you can actually liquidate and then use that as part of your retirement cash, or if you want funds. But at the same time, in the assets, you want to think of your 401ks and your IRAs, which are assets that would appreciate over the years and that you're adding monies to in any way. So that's a big part of the assets. That's a big part of what the planning is about. So your overall assets picture has to be something that increases. Now, minus your liabilities, that would include the mortgage against your house and any, maybe credit card or student loan debts that you have. And so when you sit down and then you do that calculation, assets minus liability, that would equal your total net worth. So it makes sense for you to keep track of that, either annually or biannually or so, especially by tracking all your statements from investment, and then also the things that you're acquiring. When you buy a car, you want to be very mindful of the value of the car as it goes down, and then make sure that you're paying down the actual car note, which is the liability against the asset value, for instance. That would tell you, I mean, most of the time you'll see that car is not the best way to really grow your assets. And that's, second nature, but it's worth saying, the difference with the house is that the house, hopefully, if you're in good neighborhood, would appreciate in value. So it would actually keep going up in value as your mortgage, you're paying it down. So your total net worth does grow that way. But now investments like 401ks and let's say mutual funds in general and stocks, and so those tend to appreciate, over a period of time. I understand that markets have cycles where the value of your portfolio may go up or down, and so, but typically when you're getting the right guidance, or when you inform yourself well enough, you know how to manage that, and then you can definitely end up with a portfolio over 10, 15 years that's much larger than when you began. But definitely your net worth is something you want to be mindful of. And then also your cash flow statements, and that's definitely where keeping a good sense of where your income is, when you're getting raises, or if you're working part-time jobs, and so you have a very clear picture of your income minus your expenses, and that would give you a disposable income or a deficit. You want to stay away from deficit because it typically means that you're spending more money than you're actually bringing in. So that's the concept of living paycheck to paycheck is typically because there's not enough room between your expenses and income. And hopefully you are already saving, because otherwise you're really shooting yourself in the foot. All right, go ahead. So what mechanism do you currently have in place to accumulate wealth over your career? And that's important. So typically, in a stable financial structure, or a personal finance structure, you would first start with an emergency fund. So you need to have those dollars aside in the bank, where you may be putting every month about $100 to accumulate, and then a target number. Maybe what's comfortable to you is maybe $5,000 aside. That would handle any emergency. Some people, they'll be comfortable at 10, 15. And then next to that emergency fund, you would have investment accounts. So go ahead, Jonathan. So investment accounts would actually be in two categories, like maybe retirement accounts. You could have maybe like $500 a month going there, or say that it's a couple with kids and all, they may be putting an additional $250 a month. So those would be like a different typical type of structure for investment accounts. So now those can also be broken down furthermore in tax-free accumulation. So if you take those two categories, you could have under retirement accounts a Roth IRA that would be tax-free, and in the college saving arena, you could actually use also the 529 college savings plan, which would be also tax-free plans. As long as you use them at the right time and you respect all the rules, you won't be paying any taxes. And then you have other type of accounts that would be tax deferred, like that would be the 401k, for instance. And hopefully you have a matching from your employer. So those are some of the layers. Oh, I'm sorry. And the last one would be cash value life insurance. That's also tax deferred because as you're covered with your life insurance, some of the cash that builds up in the plan would not be taxed on a what's called the cost basis. So basically, the money that you put in, it earns interest, and that interest also would not be taxed if it's borrowed against as a loan, for instance. As long as you pay the loan back, they won't tax that. So that's why it's called tax deferred. But that's for just another conversation. But I just wanted you to see the mechanism that you have to have in place to accumulate wealth. And then that works at different stages of your life, whether single, student, later on when you have a family, or even if you didn't, those can still apply in different ways. And then once you have that type of setup, it makes sense to have, contingency measures, like pretty much to protect those assets. So three areas that typically make sense would be survivor benefits. If you have dependents, definitely you want to account for that. And then income protection, the income that you're making every biweekly or however you're paid, you have to be able to protect it. God forbid, but if you're disabled for a long period of time, you have to be able to have things in place whereby you can still have that income replaced, although you cannot go to work because of that disability. So always make sure that your employer plan either offers it or you take the proper measures to have it in place for yourself. And then asset protection, and asset protection would be a range of things, even you're protecting your car with the proper, car insurance and all those different things could be a way to look at asset protection, like homeowners insurance. All those different things are part of protecting your assets so that, uh, God forbid, but something major happening like a car accident, a house burning, doesn't impact completely or destabilize you financially. You always want to make sure you have those in place.
So for the contingency, just real quick, just to give some specifics for the contingency measures. So when you take the survivor benefit, so typically life insurance, right?
Yes,
Which
absolutely.
is term, long term, all of those life insurances that, God forbid, when you are not there, it will pass on to the people that survive you. And those are some of the survivor benefits. And then for the income protection, so there's a lot of different disability types of insurances that are there, including the ones with AFLAC and I think combined. Those are all measures you can use to protect your income from. And then I think most employers also offer some level of long-term disability and short-term disability through the organization. So
Can you go
th-
back, Jonathan?
those are the those are some of the
Thank you.
examples of the income protection that you may be able to use for as you plan your life. And one of the things I always say is whenever you are doing a strategic planning for your finances, always remember that there's contingency measures are there for contingencies. So you only buy income protection to protect your income if something happens. You don't buy income protection as a way to make money in the future. And you try to educate people not to think that way so that they only buy what they need. And that is why the strategic planning is really important. So you know that okay, in any event, this is how much I spend on a monthly basis, so that in any event, if something happens to me, I need a way to have that amount of money coming to me on a consistent basis to cover my basic cost. Or how long can I be short in the short term? How long can I be out of work without going bankrupt? Maybe 3 months, but you already have saved emergency fund that can cover you for the next 3 months. Then you don't need a short-term plan. So you don't want to be spending extra money buying a short-term plan because you have enough cash saved up that you can protect yourself in the short term against any. So you have to have a good strategy in place before you buy all of these other contingency plans to help you get exactly what you need, so you don't overpay for it, and then you don't under pay for it, so that you be at a loss when something happens. I don't know if that makes
Yep,
sense. Yeah.
to me it does. Yeah. So now, Jonathan, we want to go to the conclusion, but I want you to go slowly. The first one is so. Hold on for a second, Jonathan. So the solution to the paradox, as you can see, the whole past half hour roughly was about understanding that there is a behavior, like pretty much a behavior that's pretty typical, and we try to show you how to actually contain that tendency to just go ahead and then buy this or buy that or put money here or put money there. Like Kwame just said, you can easily find yourself tangled up in a situation where, well, you have enough money to handle the next 3 months of income, but you still go around and then you buy disability insurance through AFLAC, for example. So you actually really didn't run all the numbers, or you really didn't do the planning right. So what is it that allows you or really prevents you from doing that? So the solution to that paradox, which is the natural behavior that people have when it comes to their financial questions, not to say problems or decisions, is this. First step, go ahead, Jonathan. Just hit enter once. Yeah, the right bottom to top approach. Basically, you have to keep your pyramid on its base. Basically, first begin with the strategy, like we were showing you. Then you go with an actual portfolio design. That's where you would decide that, well, you already have emergency fund here. I probably don't need that 3 month disability, because my emergency fund is already uh, furnished. Basically, it's pretty where I want it to be, so I don't need that affluent plan, for example. Then you can go to the next plan, to the next stage, which is becoming financially successful. What does it take? Taking coordinated steps towards your goal. That's all we've been discussing in this presentation. What is the way to actually coordinate all those steps? And that's the last thing. Go ahead, Jonathan. How does it all come together? Typically, what we found is putting down, numbers, and then designing a very solid profile of your financial goals and objectives. At short term, the different time frames that you want to look at, and definitely doing periodic review of that plan, because that plan is what drives the whole set of decisions that you've made, and you can clearly see how they were structured. So with those three layers, you should be able to build a very solid, uh, financial future for yourself. Now, the thing is, it might be the very first time that you see that approach. So that's why we recommend, and we can hit the last point, Jonathan, is to really spend time with financial advisors, who can actually guide you through this process and identify the elements in your own finances that are pertinent to this type of process. Be it simply helping you go to your social security statements and then seeing what are your projected numbers. Those are always part of this type of discovery session, and that's definitely what we like to help our clients with, or begin the process of helping them with.
Yeah, and one thing that I'll say, just to add to everything that Ezen has said, when you sit down with an advisor, I always 100% recommend that, because there are so many gaps that naturally you are not able to see. Even being an accountant, I realize that no matter how I do my own personal financial planning, that whenever you sit down with a financial advisor, there are other things that they will bring up that you don't even think about. So it's always good to sit, and most advisors will sit down with you. The consultation is free. It's not like lawyers where you pay the time as you spend as you spend time with them, you pay. Most advisors that I know, the consultation is free, and then moving on, you can decide whether you want to work with that advisor or not. But I think at least having a sit down, talking to them, just hearing what they have to say, and how having a very solid strategic plan to move forward will give you a good base. And if it's better to know the problem than to have a problem and not even know about it. At least if you know that, okay, I need to do more in my savings, or I'm saving too much, I need to begin to adjust, which I never hear anybody say that, but you just want to know, have a good understanding of your situation and where you want to be in the future. So I think that is a big piece. Even if you don't take away anything from this presentation, I think that would be the one thing. Sit down with a financial advisor, somebody that can help you and kind of give you a good analysis of where you are and how you can get to where you want to be when you retire. That's all I have.
All
So,
right, Jonathan, I guess back to you.
yeah,
All right.
question, clarity.
Well, I'd like to open it up. If anyone has any questions that they'd like to ask while we're still here on this webinar today, let's see if anyone has anything. Well, if no one has any questions right now, you're welcome to email me, or and I can ask Waller and Upame themselves, or we can get their email address and you can email them yourselves. Either way, I just wanted to thank you both for being on our webinar today. Everything was very informational, and I enjoyed learning a lot about finance I didn't know about earlier. So that was great. And I'll be sending out this PowerPoint later for people that weren't able to be on the call today. And ultimately, I just want to say thanks again for being on here. Yeah, that's all I have. So thanks again, and we'll talk next time.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.